Good evening to you all, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much for joining us on this edition of the 6 p.m. Prime Hour News over La Télévision du Monde. We begin this newscast today, 20th of August 2019, with this very important information as the leaders of the secessionist group Seseko Ayoktabe and Co. have been slammed with a life sentence in prison together with a fine of 250 billion francs CFA. This particular verdict was passed in the early hours of today, 20th of August 2019 at the military tribunal in Yaoundé. Catherine Kone has the details in the following report.
The military tribunal in the nation's capital have declared Seseko Ayoktabe and Co. guilty of all charges levied against them. The verdict stated that the leaders of the Ambazonia movement are charged with secession, terrorism, hostility against the state of Cameroon, non-possession of identity over armed conflict in Anglophone regions of Cameroon that has claimed over 2,000 lives, according to the International Crisis Group and the UN. According to the member of the Defense Council, Ayoktabe and Co. were sentenced to life imprisonment each and all jointly to pay a civil award of 250 billion francs CFA to the state and civil claimants, and equally pay a cost of more than 12 billion francs CFA jointly if they failed to pay the fine. The sentence, which was made at exactly 5:30 a.m., defense lawyers have described as unfair and labeled it as the most scandalous judicial proceedings in world history. They say the attitude of the judge does not only confirm his bias and personal interest in sentencing the accused persons, but equally reviews the presumed outcome of the proceedings. To Barrister Abogbala, the sentencing of Seseko Ayoktabe and Co. to life imprisonment is an affront to due process and the rule of law. He says the right to unfair trial is a fundamental human right. The sham process is a reflection to the sham management of the country. It should be recalled that they were arrested in January 2018 at a hotel in the Nigeria capital, Abuja, and were subsequently deported to Cameroon. Yaoundé had in November 2017 issued international arrest warrants for Tabe and over a dozen others. On their deportation to Cameroon, which decision was sharply criticized by the United Nations Refugees Agency, they were charged with secession and terrorism, among others. The military court convicted them of various charges, including rebellion. Their trial started in December 2018 and was postponed a number of times till today's final determination. However, the verdict have left many in confusion if it will help to solve the crisis or worsen it, and if schools will resume in the two Anglophone regions of the country come September 2019. After sentencing, life imprisonment of the self-declared leaders of the Ambazonian movement.
It should be noted that this particular verdict of life sentence, which came as a shock to many Cameroonians, especially to those in the northwest and southwest regions of the country, who think that it might serve as a means to aggravate the present socio-political chaos which is already going on in the two English-speaking regions of the country. Meanwhile, in subsequent editions of our newscast, we'll get the reactions of Cameroonians with regards to this particular court verdict sentencing Seseko Ayoktabe and Co. to life imprisonment. We now take you to talk something else, as the President of the Republic, His Excellency President Paul Biya, has ordered for the evacuation of Yves Michel Fotso, that is the former Director General of Cameco, to Morocco for medical attention. He has been jailed for so many years now for embezzlement of funds, but due to a difficulty in his health situation, the President ordered for his evacuation for health attention. The following report, still with you, Catherine Kone, gives us the details.
The former Director General of Cameroon Airlines, Yves Michel Fotso, who has been in poor health conditions for months, was evacuated to Morocco on Sunday night for medical attention after an authorization accorded to him by the head of state. He has been behind bars for years and had been handed several jail sentences on grounds of embezzlement. In 2010, the former general manager of the defunct Camé was arrested in the Apastrus affair, the purchase of the presidential plane that was in bad condition. In September 2013, Yves Fotso was handed a 25-year jail term for embezzling over 16 billion francs CFA paid in 2001 by Cameroon in a botched deal to purchase a presidential jet. In January 2013, the charges against him were dropped after the repayment of 230 million francs CFA. The former head of Cameroon had on several cases maintained his innocence until when he was slammed with lifetime jail term for embezzlement of state funds.
We now take you over to the southwest region of the country as the military has again collaborated with the civilian population. This time around, it is in Eshobi, that is a locality in Manyu division in the southwest region of the country. It should be noted that free medical aid and assistance were being offered to the population. Naji Pelaji, our lady in the field, files in with the following reports.
The population of Eshobi village in Manyu division of the southwest region have benefited from a free medical campaign from the military for over 2 years now. The population in this part of the country have not had access to quality health care. This is just the enclave nature of the area, characterized by bad roads and security concerns brought about by the ongoing socio-political crisis. The military once again went beyond its mission of providing security of goods, persons, as well as the territorial integrity of the state to cooperate with the civilian population by reaching out to the people of Eshobi village to carry out a 2 days free health campaign under the command of Colonel Eyenga Severin, head of the 21st Motorized Infantry Brigade.
We all need to be in good health. Without good health, you cannot walk. You cannot ever go to school and so on. So, but among them, we have many people which are not able to take care of their health, and it is to encourage them that we bring medical assistance, and everything is free. Consultations are free and medicines are free.
For 2 days, the vulnerable population were offered free consultations, screening and follow-up of patients where the need arose.
We do consultation and free treatment for common diseases, particularly malaria and typhoid and some rheumatism diseases. We have sugar blood tests for them that is ready and free. We do HIV free and voluntary tests, and for positive cases we advise them to come to us to military hospital as soon as possible for the care. We will try to explain them the importance for individual and community hygiene. We will explain them how to prevent some common diseases just by their hygiene. We will distribute some drugs, aquatabs, for water purifications.
The population could not help but express deep gratitude to the Cameroonian military for reaching out to them at a time they felt all hope was lost.
Our health center no dey on. We dey sick for your health center no dey. Even person fall sick, say make they carry am for go hospital. It no be easy. First time we dey carry am for head. Because you want work go reach the person fit die for road because our road not fine. We don't thank God because military they don't can enter we now. We don't glad for can console. All man day has no man way go farm. You know, they even our nearly people they nearby we a young Eshobi Mokonyo Berere all the go can here.
It should be noted that this free medical campaign has been carried in 3 out of the 6 divisions of the southwest region. The military will carry similar exercise across the entire region in the days ahead.
And now we move on to something else as the Yaoundé-Simalen Highway will be temporarily open for the 2020 African Nations Championship. This particular announcement was made by the Minister of Housing and Urban Development, Celestine Kecha-Cortez, in a meeting which she held with actors of this particular project. This was held in the nation's political capital, Yaoundé. Vilin Ama has the details in the following report.
The Minister of Housing and Urban Development, Celestine Kecha-Cortez, has declared that the Yaoundé-Simalen Highway will be temporarily used during the 2020 African Championship that will be hosted in the country. She says the Yaoundé-Simalen Highway is one of the major problems faced by the head of state, as the urban mobility involves the movement of a population from one point to another, especially a strategic point like the airports. During the meeting held by the Minister of Housing and Urban Development and the Ministry of Housing and Land Tenure System, Some points were made on the release and securing of the free highway zones that were blocked by homes located less than 50 meters on both sides in the Fundi department, as well as the development and securing of resettlement sites in Mefo and Afamba, so as to overcome the difficulties encountered by the work carried out on the Yaoundé-Simalen Highway. However, the progress of the Yaoundé-Simalen Highway project is a 92% completion rate after 24 months to the deadline.
We now take you to the western region of the country, where traffic jam has become a major problem in the city of Bafoussam, that is the capital city of the western region. This is due to the rehabilitation work that is being carried out at the Bafoussam urban city crossing, that is in relation with the public investment budget project. The following report with you, Vilin Arma, gives us details with images from our western regional correspondent, Herbert Williams Kwamo.
Traffic jam on several occasions have become an issue in the city of Bafoussam, as one would find a long line of vehicles advancing at a reduced speed. The cars sometimes extend over several meters, crossing the entrance to the city zones and the Market B axis, which has become a place of patience. Going out has become an issue, as a distance of about 8 kilometers take at least 2 to 3 hours at certain times of the day. This traffic is due to the work development of the urban crossing in the city of Bafoussam, which goes from Haino to the military camp. In addition to these inconveniences, the unpatriotic population, road users and traders at the level of Market A also settle in their work areas and compete with the drivers for the road so as to carry out their businesses. As such, the Minister of Public Works, Emmanuel Ngano, sent a technical team to Bafoussam to jointly agree with the project team and the control mission in charge of the rehabilitation works of the Bafoussam urban crossing to find the best technical solutions that allows to conduct this work by minimizing the impact of the movement of vehicles and commercial activities. A debriefing meeting was held in the conference room of the Regional Delegation of Public Works in the West, whereby several measures were adopted to allow the flow of movement in the city of Bafoussam and the smooth running of commercial activities, as well as the continuation of work. However, the urban community of Bafoussam has promised to mobilize without further delay its anti-urban disorder team in order to support the project.
And now, out of the country's borders but still remaining in Africa, for decades now, people in northern Nigeria have endured near constant conflict in Kaduna State, that is in northern Nigeria, where fighting has pitted many people. The following report with Al Jazeera News. Observe the details.
The rain and at the mercy of the elements. These are the latest victims of the ongoing violence in Kaduna State. Hundreds of them have been camped at this school since March this year, when gunmen from an opposing tribe attacked their village, killing dozens and destroying homes.
Our main problem at the moment is shelter. From then, we're able to go back home, then we talk about security.
Located in northwestern Nigeria and with a population of nearly 6 million, Kaduna State has been embroiled in conflict for decades. The violence has its roots in ethnic tensions between the state's Muslim and Christian populations. The Muslim-Christian divide has been so exacerbated by the fighting that the government has mandated these two men, a Muslim imam and a Christian cleric, to use the pulpit to try and bridge the gap between their two communities. And they have brought together traditional leaders to join their cause.
The politicians have taken this important element, sensitivity to our religious values, as a chess game for winning political office. This is why it becomes so same.
Pastor James Wuye is himself a victim of the ongoing conflict. He lost his arm when his village was targeted in the tit-for-tat attacks and now wears a prosthetic arm.
I wish they know the benefit of peace. Sometimes I feel incapacitated. I wish I am this Superman somewhere in a movie that can go drop waters in trouble zones and say, stop this killing, it will not help you.
The conflict is mainly concentrated in rural Kaduna, but has also spilled into the city. The people of Kaduna have also been physically divided along religious lines, with River Kaduna forming a natural boundary Many Christians have fled the state over the years, fleeing the almost endless cycle of violence. Those that remain behind have sought refuge in the southern part of the city, while the Muslims dominate the north. This man, the governor of Kaduna, is also leading efforts to bring peace to his conflict-riddled state.
We are making progress. Rome, they said, was not built in a day. We are very realistic about our expectations. We are pragmatic about this. But what we are optimistic about is that we are now, as a state, as Kaduna State, we are moving in the right direction.
In the first 6 months of this year, ethnic clashes in northern and central Nigeria have killed an estimated 1,300 people. That is 6 times the number of deaths from the war with Boko Haram, according to the International Crisis Group. It's these grim statistics that make the need to bring peace to the affected areas ever more urgent. Mohammed Ado, Al Jazeera, Kaduna, Nigeria.
And still out of the country, there are calls for an investigation in Iraq after more than 31 unidentified bodies were found buried in the province of Kabbalah. Al Jazeera News still has the details.
Beneath these shrouds are the faces of men, women, and children. Their families long to see again, long to know what happened to them. Last week, 31 husbands, grandmothers, and daughters were buried in an unmarked grave in this cemetery in Iraq's Karbala province. The morgue in neighboring Babel province gave the bodies to a local charity, saying they were unidentified and unclaimed.
There is negligence on the part of the government. The government should have announced to the public the existence of these bodies. DNA tests must be conducted to determine their identities so that they can be returned to their rightful relatives.
Human rights groups are accusing the government of covering up possible sectarian violence. About 250 bodies have been given to the same charity for burial since 2016. The governor of Babel province says they're from the area and their causes of death range from what he calls terrorism to murder. Suspicions have been raised because witnesses say the bodies are likely from a Sunni-dominated town called Jerf el-Sahar. It was once controlled by ISIL. During the battle to defeat it, Shia paramilitary groups are accused of killing civilians and forcibly displacing the population. The Iraqi High Commission for Human Rights is calling on the government to investigate reports of additional bodies scattered beneath the soil in Babel province. The government denies there is anything suspicious going on.
There has been a lot of negative media coverage in order to take a sectarian turn. These bodies were stored at the morgue to be identified. After the investigation was over, they were buried because the bodies were not claimed by their families.
But with so many families in the area still living in displacement camps, that might explain why no one came forward to identify the 250 bodies. For all Sana Khoder knows, her son could be among them. The family is from Jerf el-Sahar. She hasn't seen her son since 2015. When she says a Shia armed group accused him of being an ISIL member and arrested him. Her family was later driven out of their home. They're afraid if they return, they'll be killed.
He did nothing wrong. If he had, I would testify against him. But as God is my witness, he did nothing wrong.
Khoder, like so many Iraqis, may never know what happened to her loved one. The answers could be buried deep in the soil of her country. Natasha Ghanem, Al Jazeera, Baghdad.
And now giving you updates on the situation in India, the Indian government has reduced some of the restrictions which were being placed on India-administered Kashmir. It should be noted that this particular territory has been in a lockdown for some weeks now. Al Jazeera News still at the details.
10 days after a complete information blackout, the Indian government set up 4 computers with internet access for more than 200 journalists in a media center it controls in Srinagar. The reporters wait patiently until it's their turn. Saman Latif, who writes for the Indian daily The Tribune, says sometimes he queues for hours just to email his story and, if he's lucky, chat briefly with his editor.
You have to stand in the queue and wait for them, and then you send the stories. You don't get time to to wait there for the response of the editors. Then you have to go back again to the same computer and see whether your editor has approved the story or not.
The Indian government has issued press passes to most journalists in the past few days, but access to the internet is tightly controlled and freedom of movement largely restricted to within Srinagar itself. Conditions, however, have improved a little since the first days of the lockdown imposed earlier this month after New Delhi's decision to revoke Indian-administered Kashmir's autonomy.
First few days, what we're doing is trying and sitting near the television set and trying and finding out what's happening.
On August 13, the editor of the Kashmir Times filed a petition in India's Supreme Court against the communications blackout.
The government is saying that the people are happy, everything is fine, people are coming out on the roads. Let them tell us that they are indeed happy.
Desperate. But if you can...
Vrinda Grover, the newspaper's lawyer and a human rights activist, says Kashmiri journalists have had a particularly tough time.
Even in the silencing and crippling of media, what we see is the targeted silencing of the Kashmiri journalists. We do not hear that voice at all today.
It's been difficult for journalists to report from Srinagar, the capital of Indian-administered Kashmir, for the past 2 weeks. A minute on one of the phone booths opened by the government was considered a luxury. And although some restrictions have been lifted, making it relatively easier to file stories from the city, the rest of the valley remains mostly out of bounds. Anshul Vora, Al Jazeera, New Delhi.
And that was all what we gathered on today's edition of the 6 p.m. Prime Hour News over La Télévision du Monde. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for being part of this particular edition. French news comes up at 8 p.m. with East Tanjo. Until then, remain in company of the many programs which follow suit. Have a good evening.